to get Arts Council funding? In a way, the simplest thing I would say is apply for it. It's like the lottery, you've got to be in it to win it, except the Arts Council, which is funded by the lottery, gives you a much higher chance of getting funding, about 1 in 3 if your form and your project fulfil the criteria. There are 2 main types: project funding and a new stream of funding called Develop Your Creative Practice. I'll talk about the project funding first. If you're applying for something of under 15 grand, it'll take up to 6 weeks to get a decision. Over 15 grand, it'll take up to 12 weeks. The sort of projects you might look at applying for funding for could be a spoken word night over a period of time, say a year, or a show, or a series of workshops with a particular group. The Arts Council's idea is that they want to invest in what they call great arts and culture for everyone. Now, you can read a lot of things into that as a mission, but I think it's a really good one for us poets and spoken word artists, because we're trying to reach a lot of people with what we do. We're trying to have an impact beyond just one poem that somebody reads, and the Arts Council recognise that. They want that. The forms themselves, they're one of the things that put people off applying. I hate forms, and I find Arts Council forms at the moment to be arduous in the sense of pretty long, but not difficult. They're very clear about what they're asking you. In a typical project form, you will have to tell them what you want to do, how you're going to do it, who it's for. You'll include a budget, you'll include a timeline, but they do recognise that what you may end up delivering, because of how things change along the way, may be something different. You've also got to say how you're going to evaluate the project and how you're going to make sure that it's accessible to people. The Arts Council is increasingly interested in accessibility and diversity. They will ask about any income that you've got for the project, and it could be income in kind, meaning, for example, that you've got a rehearsal space, or that someone is offering you a short period of mentoring. In my case, my last project grant that I applied for was some funding for my show about Northern women to tour. It was about £11,000 I applied for, and my income was actually from shows that I had already got booked in, and so I said that income was approximately £500 per show. You do need to register with the Arts Council's funding portal, which is called Grantium, and that will take about 6 to 10 days to come through your registration before you can use the portal. It's not the best portal in the world, it's not beautifully intuitive like iTunes or something, but it's functional and it works. Something else I'd want to mention is the Develop Your Creative Practice funding. The Arts Council has recognised that it's all very well investing in particular projects that might grow audiences or give artists a chance to develop, but if you don't directly give creative people the chance to experiment or be mentored or take some time to brush up their skills, then actually they're just going to be on an eternal treadmill of applying for funding and doing things for other people, and they're never going to have a chance to develop their practice. You can apply for up to £10,000 of funding. There are 2 rounds a year with particular deadlines. They've recognised that creative people don't have time necessarily if you're working as a freelancer to fill out forms, and it's much easier than the project form actually. The hard thing is knowing what you want to apply for, knowing how you're going to put that you're developing your creative practice. I would definitely recommend looking at the Arts Council website for examples and previous funding bids. The same for Arts Council project bids as well. They do have loads of helpful information on there. If you can, a brilliant thing is to actually talk to an Arts Council officer. It used to be that you could just have a meeting and say, oh, I'd like to talk through this project. Nowadays that seems to be a bit harder. Look out though for advice surgeries or events where you might have opportunity to meet someone from the Arts Council and talk things through. But an even better thing is to speak to other people who have had Arts Council funding for a similar thing for what you're looking for. Personally, I've probably under-applied for Arts Council funding in the past, and then in the last year realised that what I do was imminently fundable and there was nothing to lose by going for it. So I got £11,000 towards my touring show, which is brilliant because I could have done it at a stretch with the income that comes in from the show itself, but actually I was having to pay up front for things like a director, a videographer, an actor, and it's been wonderful to have those costs paid to me up front. You should also include time for you should also include funding for your time, whether that's producing or leading a project, or writing time, or rehearsal time if it's for a show. Rates for this can vary. The Arts Council no longer publish recommended rates, but you could look at the Society of Authors. I generally, in a bid, fund my time at around £200 a day, depending on what it's for. I feel like I could go on for a long time about how to get Arts Council funding, but I'm just going to return to my point that I made at the beginning. The only way to get it is to apply for it. If you fulfil the criteria and fill out the form with what it asks you to fill out, which is a great thinking process in itself when you're planning a project, then you have a really, really high chance of getting funding. Good luck.